Good evening and welcome to the West Country debate. If 2016 was the year the people reminded the politicians who's in charge, well, 2017 must be the year those politicians act. Up for discussion tonight. Brexit and Theresa's 12-point plan. But what does it mean for us? Are our hospitals and GP surgeries really in crisis? If so, can it be fixed? And tomorrow, Donald J. trumps us all to become the world's most powerful man. Hello and welcome to our New Look programme. And joining me for the first West Country debate, the Conservative MP for East Devon, Sir Hugo Swire. Alongside him, Labour peer Baroness Dawn Primarolo, former Bristol South MP. And at the end, UKIP spokesman for small business, Ernie Warrender, who stood in Weston-super-Mare in the last election. But of course, we start tonight with Brexit. What else? The PM unveiled her plan this week, saying it was a vision that will shape a stronger future and build a better Britain. But Jeremy Corbyn dubbed it a bargain basement Brexit, threatening it would damage the country's businesses, jobs and public services. Let's have a look at Theresa May's key messages. The plan takes us out of the single market within the EU because Theresa May's priority is to control immigration from the rest of the EU 27 countries. And that is impossible to do within the single market rules. But she wants to negotiate a new free trade deal with Europe. Although even if we have more control over who comes in and out of the UK, the PM wants to maintain the passportless common travel area with the Republic of Ireland. And then, when the deal is done, MPs will vote on it. Well, let's pick up on that vote. It'll also be voted on in the House of Lords. Dawn, there is a lot of rumours that the House of Lords will kind of try and delay it, pause it, vote against it. Will you?
I think what the House of Lords will want to do is say, yes, look, 52% of the population voted to leave, but that doesn't equal 100% of the population, and the people who wanted to remain have to have a voice as well. So in scrutinising what the government is bringing forward and looking to improve it, to press the government on its agenda, we're going to be looking and saying, look, the Prime Minister said Britain would be poorer if it left the European Union. That's what she said in the campaign. So what's going to happen with jobs? We've got to make sure that we keep all our jobs. Economy is crucial. Where's the plan for the economy? And finally, if we're going to have trade, we need to be absolutely sure that we're not going to have the horrendous tariffs that the NFU fear of 30% and added red tape and bureaucracy. So there's a lot of risk around this in protecting our communities.
Well, Hugo, let's bring you in there. Up until recently, you were a Foreign Office Minister dealing with Europe amongst other things. What reaction will Theresa May's speech have in the parts of the world you used to deal with?
Well, it depends who you're talking to, really. Of course, as Dawn says, there's tremendous risk in all this, but there's also huge opportunity. And the United Kingdom is nothing if you look at our history, if we're not a outward-looking trading nation-state. After all, the back of the East India Company, it's how we forged our empire. We did deals around the world with countries and companies, and it made Britain great. And we can do that again. And of course, coming outside the EU in the single market means that every trade negotiation we do will be a bilateral trade negotiation. We've already seen countries queuing up saying they want to do that with us, headed by the United States of America.
So in your point of view, I guess a reason to be confident. Ernie, you're the only one here who voted to leave. Have you stopped smiling since June the 24th?
Well, they're ganging up on me. It was, yeah, but no, not really. And also, when you look at predictions from the experts, Fab, look at reality where we are today. Look at what's happening in business. And Hugo rightly talks about trade agreements. Well, I don't know if any of your viewers have got one of these, an iPhone. How can they have? We don't have a trade agreement with America. You just need a product and a will to trade. A trade agreement will keep the politicians busy. But we managed to buy iPhones, Microsoft Office, New Zealand wine. No, it's good news. It's good news. We are a trading nation. We're great, Britain.
We'll find out on Tuesday how the Supreme Court has decided that MPs in particular, how they'll decide on triggering Article 50. Are you confident that'll go through?
Well, I'm going to put my neck on the line here and say that I expect the Supreme Court will uphold the finding of the High Court. That's the general expectation. Yes, I think Article 50 will be triggered, and I'm glad there's going to be a vote at the end of this process. But look, these are the opening shots of what is going to be quite a long, torturous series of negotiations, and we can't predict the outcome yet. But I think we're in the right place now.
Of course, our farmers are massively affected by a departure from the European Union. The government has promised to keep funding levels the same until 2020 and cut red tape. But farmers are nervous about what happens next as they rely on free trade and cheap EU labour. Earlier, I caught up with the Farming Minister and Camborne and Redruth MP, George Eustace.
I'm very clear that what we really want to be focused on is helping farmers get a better return in the marketplace, getting that fairness in the supply chain and making sure that they become more profitable and more productive.
But we heard from the Prime Minister this week that Brexit means leaving the single market and it means controls on migration. Well, that's going to make it harder for farmers to trade and harder probably to get cheap labour, isn't it?
Well, look, taking back control on issues like immigration doesn't mean that you end all immigration. And look, we recognise that in some sectors, particularly some sectors of agriculture, there's a heavy reliance on seasonal labour. And the Home Office are very aware of this. We're looking at schemes such as short-term work permit schemes to help sectors that need labour like agriculture. So taking back control of immigration doesn't mean pulling up the drawbridge. It just means we have control over who we let in.
It's your job to know farmers, farming. The Department of International Trade, I guess, will be the one representing them after this negotiations right around the world. Can they have confidence that that department really gets what they need in these negotiations?
Well, the model that we're going to follow is the one that's approaching the US, which is that DEFRA will handle the agricultural elements of any trade agreements. So I and DEFRA officials will be part of the delegation when trade deals are negotiated, and we will handle the agricultural elements of any deal.
Now that is more clarity than we've had before. Let's get the response from the National Farmers Union, who wanted us to remain.
We have to remember there are risks here. We have to remember that agriculture, is always the last chapter in any trade deal to be agreed. Agriculture at the moment is not part of the customs union, and the Prime Minister was clear that we are out of the single market. We've been trading tax-free with Europe for many years, and that has been a real positive for the consumer and for farmers. And it is vital that we have a whole economy approach here, that agriculture isn't left to one side or sacrificed on the back of it. That's really, really important.
Well, let's pick up on that with Ernie. You say small business can be large. Is this part of it?
Well, I mean, you fastened on agriculture there, which is a huge thing in Britain. There is a massive trade imbalance with the EU. I cannot believe, if we're going to drill down into this, they are going to tariff us, because obviously we would rightly tariff them. Farmers are vital to this country. They always have been vital to this country, and any government would be senseless to impinge upon that. But what they need, what all business needs, is clarity and quick action. We do not need slow-mo Brexit.
But are you happy that the door will still be open to EU migrants to come here?
Of course. I mean, nobody has ever said, all this pulling the drawbridge up and all this kind of stuff, people want some control over immigration, over migration. We want to be able to see what skill sets people can bring to the... And I speak as somebody who went to Australia years ago. I would have been that economic migrant.
Now, Dawn, Labour has really been calling for clarity. Last week, your leader, Jeremy Corbyn, said Labour is not wedded to free movement of EU citizens as a point of principle, but I do not want that to be misinterpreted, nor do we rule it out. Well, I'm afraid that makes no sense. What clarity are Labour giving us?
Well, I think there's quite a lot of discussion going on in all the parties about how we find our way through these huge challenges now of Brexit. Look, it seems to me the most important thing is the economy, and that we have been a member of a customs union without tariffs and with free movement, not encumbered by red tape, and that is hugely important to the future of jobs and the security of this country. We're not in the 18th or 19th century where trade deals were very different, and if we're not in that customs union, then we're going to have severe problems. And frankly, you can't say, I don't want to be a member of your club anymore, European member states, but I want the best bits at a knockdown price for the UK. It doesn't work like that.
As a backbencher, what did you make of Theresa's speech?
I thought it was very good. I thought it brought some clarity. I think, as I said earlier, it's impossible to be too detailed right at the beginning of the negotiations. It would be completely crazy to go into great detail at this stage, but she's set the parameters and the architecture of the debate that's now going to ensue. But I think Dawn overlooks one thing, and I think this is a common problem really, is we talk about Europe and what they want and the tariffs they want to impose, but who are we actually talking about? If we're talking about the negotiators or the commissioners, quite possibly they want to give us a hard time. But if you talk to the bosses of their companies, of BMW, of Volkswagen, the biggest market for BMWs is the United Kingdom. Do we really think that the German car manufacturers are going to want their government to impose tariffs on the UK in order that the UK impose tariffs on their products? I don't think so.
You're confident their voice will be heard?
I think it would be crazy of Chancellor Merkel going into an election this year to ignore what her major manufacturers are saying.
But Hugo, we're already getting companies here, HSBC and others in the banking sector, Toyota again today, saying, look, this uncertainty
Honda and Swindon, though, said they were pleased about the certainty.
I don't think that there's a certainty there.
Barclays?
But what we have to say is that for every company that may say, yes, this is for me, there are others that are saying, no, it's problematic. And in that change in our economy is huge risks to job, to standard of living and to the future of the UK. And it's a huge problem.
Conversely, Dawn, let me just say one thing. For instance, on the financial services, there are certain things that some of our financial services companies would not be able to do unless they had branches within the EU. Most of them do have branches to do that. But equally, conversely, there are a lot of European financial services who would have to do the same in the UK. So you'd actually see offices opening up in the City of London from overseas companies.
But
so it works both ways.
I agree with you, Hugo. There's not a clear route there, and
I
that's the problem.
The one thing we can guarantee on is this debate will go on for at least the next 2 years. And with Brexit dominating conversation, it has to be something big to beat it in the national news agenda. And certainly the NHS has been doing just that. A lot has been said about a so-called crisis in our accident and emergency departments. And at the weekend, the Prime Minister said GPs should work longer hours to cut the demand. But is she right? One senior GP from Swindon insists she's not.
We have funding in general practice which has been dropping and dropping and dropping in the last 5 years, from about 12% of the NHS total budget now to about 7% of the NHS total budget. With reducing resources, increasing demands, we just cannot anymore square the circle.
Now, last week, the committee, which scrutinises how ministers spend our cash, heard from the head of the NHS. He told them he needs more money, quite simply. Well, let's hear from two of our MPs who sit on that very committee.
He's been very clear that if the money stays the same, hard choices will have to be made. And what, he didn't say this, but what that means is longer waiting lists, harder to see GPs, harder to get an appointment in hospital.
What has happened over time is a change in the demand, a change in what we can offer, and a change in what people expect. And that means we have to fundamentally look at how we deliver services. And that, it seems to me, is equally important to do we or do we not have the right amount of money.
Now, Hugo, you're one of the most vocal campaigners of MPs in Devon to try and save community hospital beds. Is the government, is your party really getting to grips with this problem?
Well, we have 20% of the country's community beds in community hospitals in East Devon, so of course it's a subject very close and dear to me. But look, Anne-Marie Morris is absolutely right. We're facing a perfect crunch that we've known is coming for years because of the demographics and ageing population, people's expectations of what they can be treated for, and also, of course, the great cost of drugs. And that's putting huge pressure on the health service. I think the time has come to put politics aside, to have a grown-up debate about what the NHS should be about, what levels of service it can provide, and critically how that dovetails into social care. They should be looked at the same. It's completely ridiculous that the National Health Service is funded by national government, as by national taxation, and social care is funded by local government. The two should be more properly integrated, but I do think it's time to have a revolutionary look about cradle to death care for people in this country.
Now, Hugo talks there about putting party politics to one side. I should point out that you were a health minister at one point during the Labour government, and of course I'm sure there were crises there. Should Labour be accepting some of the blame as doctors that were being trained while you were a minister are only now coming in to becoming GPs, rather than just slagging off the Tories all the time?
Well, let's just remind everybody that under the Labour government, spending on the health service went from 39 billion a year to 117 billion a year. What we've got now is huge pressure within our health service because they haven't got enough resources. That funding hasn't kept pace with growth in demand, let alone new services. The staff are doing a brilliant job, and we should all constantly congratulate them and support them and reinforce what they're doing. And frankly, to blame GPs, as the PM appeared to do last week by saying they should work more time and it would be all right, is ridiculous. Our health service is the most cost efficient and fairest in the world, and we should be proud of it and fund it properly.
Now, the Prime Minister would say that there is more money, a couple of £1 billion coming in by 2020 and 5,000 more doctors. Wow. Of course, much of the debate, Ernie, has been between the two parties represented to your right. What would UKIP do to solve this problem?
Gosh, they're both to my right, are they? Basically...
Tell us where the 350 million is going to be.
Basically...
that is something that is an answer, isn't it?
It's a point. It was spent. I mean, it's not the point I'm answering here, because you're talking about the NHS, and to solve the NHS in 20 seconds, it will tax even my enormous brain. However, it's fairly obvious. One thing I said in front of a Unison meeting, it is the clue's in the name. It's the National Health Service. We are losing money hand over fist by attempting to be the International Health Service, and when that was greeted with universal groans, I asked the chief groaner, do you ever go on holiday? Do you take health insurance? And it went very quiet for a while and people started giggling. It is the National Health Service. I'm a child of the 60s, as I suspect Dawn and Hugo are.
I'm a bit older, I'm afraid.
Oh, wow, you know, nothing more than a bit of
Say it's a compliment, say it's a compliment.
Seriously, I was brought up with free education, free teeth, and free health service. Successive parties have destroyed the first two. Kids with 50 grand debt, go and get your teeth done. Don't let them do the same to the NHS. UKIP are at the moment in the middle of a huge NHS review. We said very clearly last time, it can be funded. I mean, Hugo touched upon it. When Churchill and Beveridge sat about and cooked this up, when Bevan put it into action, the most complex operation was a hysterectomy, broken leg. Look at it now, it's magic what they can do. The funding has to grow.
Now, certainly the government believes it has the answers and is working through them. One thing we can't shy away from, though, at the moment is tomorrow. The most powerful job in the world changes hands and sees the somewhat controversial Donald Trump take control. Now, Ernie, let me start with you. Of course, your former leader, Nigel Farage, is one of his best pals, we're led to believe. You must be counting down the minutes till tomorrow afternoon.
It's the democratic choice by their rules of the American people. And one thing I would like to say, it would have been nice had people from all parties behaved with a little more statesmanship towards him and probably both of the candidates in this election in the past. A little more diplomacy, possibly.
Well, I'm guessing Jeremy Corbyn is perhaps one of the people you're mentioning there.
Well, and David Cameron.
Well, of course, he's not
Boris.
in the picture really anymore in that sense. But let's pick up on the Jeremy Corbyn. He was not very welcoming. Should we not just now kind of accept it? He's been democratically elected and we need him, particularly as we leave the European Union?
Absolutely. He's President-elect of the United States. He's going to be appointed formally tomorrow. He deserves respect for that. Some of the things he says doesn't require respect. But I think we need to be very careful here. Donald Trump will do what's best for America. He will not be looking to make deals and help out the UK. So any trade deal will be a deal that's good for America, and we've yet to see how long it will take and whether it will be good for us as well.
Well, Hugo, with your former Foreign Office hat on, if I can take you back to then, is the diplomacy and the style of Trump something that you would have found easy to engage with?
Well, I actually called the Trump election right. I thought Trump was going to beat Clinton, and he did. I think I agree with Dawn. I think if you take seriously some of the things he said, then then there is cause for concern. But I think it's one of those situations where the expectation is so low that people are actually going to be rather surprised. That's my hope anyway. And if you look at it, he's actually got an enormous amount of power, this guy, because he is the new President of the United States. He's got a nomination to the Supreme Court, which not many incoming presidents get. He's also got Congress, a majority in Congress. So if he can keep the Republican Party on side in Congress, which is by no means given, of course, he can actually, rule and get his policies through in a way that Obama and other previous presidents have simply been unable to do so. So I think he will try and make America great again, and by doing that he'll do what Reagan did in the early years, is start rebuilding the infrastructure of America, which the viewers who go to the States know is in serious need of rebuilding.
We're led to believe his inauguration speech will be about 20 minutes long, and he's pretty much written it all himself. But up until now, it's only really been on Twitter and social media and that we've heard what he's up to. And he's sent some quite controversial tweets, it has to be said, over the time. Proof that something you say online is there forever and can most definitely come back to haunt you, I think, in some cases. Now, of course, in our 24-hour news culture, the ability to get hold of our elected representatives and other politicians and see what they're thinking at any time of day has arguably changed the way we see our MPs. First of all, do you agree?
I don't. I mean, I have...
You're on Twitter.
I have a system whereby I actually don't tweet myself. I say what I want to tweet, and then I agree the tweet, but I don't press the button, because otherwise you end up doing it too late at night or too early in the morning, and you live with the results. So I'm pretty careful how I tweet. Once it's there, I've got over 16,000 followers, and once it's there, you can't really retract it. It's done.
Ernie, I'd probably spend the rest of my life reading all of your tweets and all the various different video messages and everything like that. How important is it to you?
I don't know is the honest answer. I suspect you're not going to run a country by having a tweeter. One thing on America, though, I mean, I see us, and it's a shame other people don't, as America's gateway to Europe, and conversely Europe's gateway to America. And I find the fact that he talks to Putin rather than shouts at him reassuring, without wishing to say they're either of them wonderful. Okay, I find it very reassuring. Tweet, social media, yes, there are a legion of keyboard heroes out there, but what I kind of say is go and talk to people, look at them. And I did the hustings in Glastonbury. UKIP in Glastonbury, oh, that was fun. But afterwards, several people came up and said, well, you haven't got two heads, you're not, to quote, a loony fruitcake, I think, and other things. What on earth are you about?
Dawn, very briefly, you nodded then about talking to people rather than being on Twitter.
Listen, politics is about a dialogue, about understanding people and finding out what we have in common instead of arguing with each other. And I'm not on Twitter, and I much prefer to talk to people, listen to what they've got to say and try and persuade them of my point of view. Can't do that on Twitter.
And on that civilised note, we'll end it there. Thank you to my guests, Hugo Swire, Dawn Primarolo and Ernie Warrender. The next West Country debate is on Thursday the 9th of February. I hope you can join me then. But for now, thanks for watching and good night.